what we believe concerns exist even after our interventions in the courtroom, at the district level, at the High Court level, or even in the Supreme Court level. You've got orders, non-implementation of orders, so on and so forth. So what we did is, Kaljugbi points we just split it into two basic areas based on how today's session should look like. The first session was on legal aid and the second session is on prison reform. So these were the points that have come. I'll quickly just go through them. If anybody believes some points were discussed yesterday and we have slipped in entering them here, please point them out so that we can just quickly look at them. Some of the suggestions that have come with regard to what needs to be done to improve the legal aid system, these are the points. One of the points that came about was that we need to look at how we can review the income slab for accessing legal aid. That was Monica Sakani's point, that in Maharashtra, you have 50,000. Your income has to be less than 50,000 to be eligible for legal aid, under a notification of the Legal Services Authorities Act. The second point that came about was that if you want to make legal aid systems efficient, competitive and competent, you will have to enhance the reimbursement for lawyers under the Legal Services Authorities. Improve conditions for lawyers, conditions of basically access for legal aid lawyers in prisons, and make available facilities for them so that they can discharge their duties effectively. One of the conditions was that for legal aid lawyers to also be effective, because you're looking at the vulnerable and poor sections of society, the bail conditions, including those for surety and documentation, will have to be reviewed. One of the questions that has come up is about Lok Adalats. Monica's other point also was that the setting of provision whereby something like plea bargaining will need to be reviewed because it's being misused predominantly. One of the suggestions that has come out of the experience from Maharashtra has been that we need to ensure that what basically happens is visibly various rights of prisoners, even though they make applications, because there's no production of the accused during his date, none of his applications are heard.
Production of accused.
And wedding applicant. One of the suggestions that's come about is that if you want to make the legal service authorities more functional and effective, you should also see that they start functioning out of prisons. A consistent suggestion that's been coming throughout yesterday has been that there is absolutely, whether it's been experienced in Calcutta, that you have lawyers who are assigned a matter, but what happens on that case, how much time does the lawyer take, does the lawyer deliver adequate services, is there any feedback from the person concerned? No such information exists with the legal service authorities, so there is needs for documentation by these legal service authorities. There has been a backlash because a lot of people do make certain kind of amount of interventions in prisons, but under trials, and those in prison are not necessarily convinced that the quality of support that they get or follow-up is adequate. One of the questions that have come, one of the points that has been made is that we have to now see whether we can set in place some minimal standards of efficacy of legal service lawyers. We also need to start looking at whether the government is making available adequate budgetary provisions for the functioning of the legal service authorities. Though you have judgments which say that a person is entitled to legal aid from the time of arrest, and a list of legal aid lawyers are supposed to be available at every police station, this is not practically done. And we also need to see how you can creatively try and enforce this in a more practical manner. Capacity building of lawyers required. Using local governance to increase awareness about legal aid, to ensure that there is diversity in the panel of legal aid lawyers, so that a client feels comfortable to choose from the diversity. Again, because we're dealing with vulnerable and poor sections of society, the need for a witness protection program, protection for families of complainants, gets underlined even further, and we need to try and integrate that with improvement in the legal aid system. A speedy trial, especially for vulnerable sections of society, because the clients of those who seek legal aid, in all probability, will not have the sustenance capacity to go through a protracted trial and make them more vulnerable in due course. Therefore, a speedy, how do you integrate legal aid work with expedited trials? Awareness and training of judges and magistrates as to the legal aid process, and general awareness. Now that's what has come from on legal aid. Is there anything else that you want to add to this on legal aid? That was discussed yesterday. We'll add more today in case we'll do a quick more session and saying what else needs to be done. But as of yesterday, is there anything on legal aid that has been left out?
For the training of magistrates. Yeah. Changes in prison act.
We'll just revisit this for the next session as to what we want to add to this. So I'll just go to a quick recap of prison conditions. Some of the suggestions that have come about for improving, for focusing on prison reform was of making the jail manual accessible to inmates of jails, paralegal training for inmates on their rights within the jail, making prison information accessible using technology so that there is as much information about prisons in the public portal, access to prisons by organization and access to jail at odd hours as well, making the jails accessible. Focus on open jails, looking at how you might want to read into or read out of the Prison Act as it exists, or advocacy for a new legislation. Efficacy of looking at how provisions of the Offenders Act, parole and prolong is being done. Looking at health services and education facilities in jails. Looking at how you can have greater visitation rights and access for communication for inmates of prisons. Need to inform the family on the arrest of a person. How do you ensure that this is followed? Segregation of male and female prisons, including during transport. Compulsory revision committee to monitor jails. Electronic calculation of under trial prisoners. Trained counselor and therapists for prisoners. Focus on section 437(2) of the CRPC, basically challenging the virus.
437?
Yeah? Should not be that. Should be declared otherwise. Basically challenge the constitutionality of this amendment. Special provisions for expecting mothers, exploring options of parole, provisions for sanitary supplies for women, female doctors and gynecologists for women inmates, pediatricians for children in prison, as well as looking at the option of hiving away women prisons from the central prison, which is for men, so that you're not looking at isolating women within male prisons, but at creating an entirely new structure to them.
Let me come to it. Wages.
कोई और बात या डिस्कशन जो हुआ और जो यहाँ पर बोर्ड पे नहीं आया और आपको अगर याद रहता है कि आपने सजेशन दिया था जो नहीं यहाँ पर इनकॉर्पोरेट हुआ?
Close the jail for